So I met Guillaume, or at least I met Guillaume with his software a couple of years ago, and I have a computing background, but not anything to do with Scheme or Lisp, and I couldn't quite believe what I saw he had done. The thing I saw was Yao Nu, as you saw it yesterday, essentially. And before seeing that, he told me something like, I would like you to show you this software I wrote in a language that I created. And meaning, of course, it was created on top of, using a macro system on top of Gambit, but that was a little too elaborate to explain up front. So my first thought was, well, nobody creates their own computer language, especially not this one person. And so with an air of disbelief, I looked at it, and I saw it, and it was spectacular.
Yeah.
So for a number of years now, I've been involved in a practice that brings people who could live in groups in the same area, or they could be isolated in different parts of the world together. It's a practice of just being with each other as you are, and having a conversation not about anything that's going on in your life or anything you've thought about or reasoned about, but simply what it's like to be with each other in this moment. And these people have online ways of gathering and performing this practice. They just use off-the-shelf software like Google Hangouts or Zoom or something like that. But what has always struck me is it's a group of people that is trying to take their in-person world, the way we get together in a room and maybe sit around in a circle, and take that online, but just using something that is really for other purposes, really for the purposes of holding business meetings. So you can do it that way, but what if we were able to create software that was purpose-built for this community, for connecting in the ways that they would like to connect? And so I'm going to show you together. I'd like you to keep in mind as you see it how simple it is. If you notice there's not a lot of features in Together, that's a deliberate design decision. It's tailored towards people who are completely technically inept. And as we've started installing it on people's computers, we've realized that people in this world often have very little money. They often have really old computers and crappy internet systems.
Yes.
So these are the kinds of challenges that we mostly encounter. And the reason I'm telling you a little bit about the practice, which is called circling, is because one of our other key design decisions has to do with if these are people who are coming in online to experience everything about how it is to be together and practice how good we are at doing that and grow our muscles in doing that, then why would we have software enforce rules for us? So that's another thing I want to keep in mind as we're looking at this. And so with that, I think I will bring up Guillaume's version of Together. And I just press enter. I don't know why it's coming up or not coming up.
But we've had problems with the router, so
Yeah.
I just hope we can connect because it's connecting to a central server on
There we
G-Cloud.
go.
There we go.
Okay, so we have one.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to maximize this.
Maybe.
You can turn.
What do?
So-
sorry, I'll.
Oh, yeah.
I'll
Oh, yeah, right.
I'll-
There,
Yes.
perfect.
Yeah.
So the first feature of Together is that you can have private meetings, but this is tailored towards an invited group of individuals who either know each other or might like to meet each other. There's that assumption about the entire users group. So everybody who joins this is going to be able to see who else is in this world. In the upper left, you can see the gathering, and right now there's only Guillaume right there. But this is running on a Google Cloud server, and it's open to our world of installed users. So anybody who joins together will show in that box of people. And now I'm going to join. I hope. It'll just take me a minute. There we go. And here we are. And what you can do in this area we call the gathering is you can see who else is there. You can see what circles have formed, which I will show in a moment, and you can text each other. And that's it as far as I can think, unless I've forgotten anything. So I could say hello, and somebody could see that and respond. Something like that. And then, if you decide you're going to actually practice circling together, we have a facility for you to create a circle.
Oh yeah, of course.
Oh
There's
yeah, we
no
need some
light,
light
so
for this. So
Of
yeah, we
course.
can get over there if you
Yeah.
want. This is the light coming on.
because this is the video camera.
How do we turn a light on here?
I just push my belly on it.
Okay, there we go. So there's
Hey.
And now I'm simply going to select this circle that I've determined I would like to go into, which you can't see on screen anyways. And
And I'll stop my audio so that we don't have.
we're stopping audio because we don't have, we can hear each other, we can pick up each other. So we have an audio video system that really looks like, it's just very bare bones. We have an interface that is not there until you move the mouse, until you move this mouse. And what can we do here? We can start or stop audio, we could leave, I'll deal with focus in a moment. We could show the people who are in the world. We can show chat messages. And that's it.
Yeah, the only other thing that is active is the button in the top right, if you want to
We could,
talk about it.
the button in the top right would allow us to change video resolution,
Yes.
which is just an issue to do with, especially in these early phases, the processor power required to process video can really heat up computers a lot. So we're trying to be super conservative in looking at what kind of computers people have and keeping the processing power down. So, do you want to add some images? Oh, actually, oh yeah, first of all, this that you're seeing right here is a 3D world. And it just looks like there's two images on the screen, but it's actually the genesis of a circle. And if we were to add more images, it would become more obvious what it looks like. So now I'm going to invite you to add some.
And because we were, of course, developing the software and didn't have any community, we decided to add the ability to add images and even video to actually be able to test our software. So,
Can I ask a question?
yes.
Is the video P2P or does it go through the central server?
No, it's central server. We actually experimented with peer-to-peer at first, and at some point we decided that, it was much simpler to just run a central server.
And our images don't matter all that much anymore.
No, I know, but still. So Barbara doesn't like it, but I love to start with her dad. And where's your mom? Yeah, and her mom. And here's my mom. And here's my dad.
I see Mark.
Oh yeah, no, it's another Mark. And here's my son. And maybe let's start with that. So if you want to talk,
Okay.
I don't know.
So we're starting to see more the outlines of an actual circle. And one feature I could do is I could start it rotating so that we can see that it's a circle. And we could select any person in it and bring them to the front. Or we could simply return to home position. And in our imagination of what you might want to do, an application called circling, where you focus on some people for a while, where you be in the present moment, I thought it was at least interesting to see what it would be like if it looked like an actual circle. And if you don't want it to look like a circle, we have other ways that it could look. It could look like focus mode with the circle down here. So you could change who's in focus. It could look like Zoom or any other video conferencing software where everybody is simply in equal size squares. It can look like circles. There's only 3 possibilities. And now that we have the circle mode, I've noticed in our user community, as people look at it, sometimes they feel critical of this as kind of gimmicky. And they don't get that this is kind of the beginning of what a 3D world could be. They don't actually get that it is 3D or what that might be. And so over time, we're hoping that we'll import elements of Yaonu into this so that the way you could be in an online circle might involve all kinds of things that aren't possible in just a regular video conferencing software. We could have avatars in here. We could be building beautiful things in the background with blocks. We could be doing, I'm not sure what else we could be doing. People have suggested a disco ball. I don't know.
And that's in line with keeping it so simple that ordinary people can use it on their own computer?
Good point. That's
Actually,
a big challenge. Yes.
it's right now. This is the goal.
Yeah.
And I don't know how it's going to grow.
Oh.
Right. I don't know who's going to be in the end be our user base.
I see.
I've invited certain numbers of people, and I've been surprised at the ways they have responded and not responded.
But
Earlier, so on the
you know that
direction
if you wait 5 years, then everyone will have a pretty current computer.
Not with that
You would be
community.
You'd be surprised. at
You're
this
talking
community.
a community.
I mean, like 20 years is...
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't think people could be so technically unknowing.
So
One thing I want to touch upon is you talked about basically this Magnus saying it was a bit gimmicky,
Yeah.
but it's one user who reported that. I just want to say that our own personal experience, Barbara and me, of doing the calls, but mostly her and me and maybe a couple of person, there is something for me that profoundly relaxes me when I'm in a group that there's actually just us two, but you can imagine more people, compared to being in a mode where something in my system just stresses out. It's so mathematic and completely not alive, compared to when I go back here and it feels it just feels good on my system. It's like, it's a circle, I see it go that way, it's what it does to me, and Barbara has reported the same kinds of, experiencing of that, and most people that we've shown it kind of really like it, but we kind of haven't had the opportunity yet, unfortunately, to have big circles to actually really see if it really works. So we're kind of still on the we don't know, and then Yaonu kind of comes in, and so it's a big we don't know where we're going, and
I think one way to you have problems asking people to download things. So the distribution model of your software should be easy, like a web-based thing. If you can do this in WebGL, and if Gambit has the JavaScript backend, you can actually do that. But requiring people to download a piece of software could be a hurdle.
Yeah.
So would that get around Windows virus checkers, for example?
Yeah.
no, but
If
if
you
you
run the
run in the
Yeah,
browser,
it's in the browser, yeah.
Oh, if you run in a browser.
Yeah.
We're not running in a browser. We're
Yeah.
running, this is running on Gambit.
Yeah.
So if Gambit wants to run in a browser.
Gambit can run on the browser.
It does.
That's
Yeah. Yeah, okay, yeah, no, yeah.
But that has been a big technical difficulty for us, because we have to maybe you did, if I show the first, maybe you can start the installer again. Because we created this,
I can do one. Sorry.
just quit and restart and show the installer.
Oh, that's gonna be on your computer.
Oh, on my computer, of course. So we have this software that you see there. It's actually a remote installer that will automatically update and self-update, and all the bells and whistles. And so, although technically it has been really difficult, people, have no problem using it. The thing that has been surprising is how people we've invited who have all been really like, oh my God, this is what we want, it's so much fun and all that, and nobody's actually coming. So at this moment, we're kind of in this phase where we have this amazing software, we think so. And the community is kind of not responding, although, it's only 20-ish people, but it's still like, really, we kind of don't know what's happening. So in that interim, Gambit30 happened, and I wanted to kind of showcase Yaonu, so I started get back in Yaonu, and now we're pretty excited about, creating a warm place with, trees and things, and, having some other features, but we don't know. We're really in the place of, we have this, we don't know what's happening next. It's really,
Well, it's tangential, but I had the exact same experience with something I built.
Yeah.
People will often tell you, yeah, I really want this, but then you have to sort of break, it has to become a habit. So I built something for the company I work for because our clients wanted it. And we spent a lot of money on this, and nobody uses it. Like, they're like, yeah, we really need this, but you look at the logs and they're empty.
Yeah.
So I think this is a problem in many different.
and have you been able to kind of?
I make calls and nobody uses it.
Yeah, we love it.
Yeah.
And it's a network effect. Like,
It is.
the reason that everybody's on Facebook is because everybody's on Facebook, and if you want to communicate with somebody, that's often their vector of communication.
And I think Facebook had a project very similar to this. And Google, they all scrapped it.
They what?
They all scrapped it.
Google Plus?
No,
Google
it's actually, they acquired a startup and does something very similar.
Okay, and I don't know. The thing is that as we started bringing the world of Yaonu in, or revisiting it, we had this vision that. Oh yeah, we can have all kinds of images in here. And we can have music. We can have like videos playing, whatever.
Did you make the installer yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah, the auto update installer thing.
So we're starting to have this vision now, kind of zooming ahead of our user base, which doesn't exist.
We're zooming ahead of our non-existing user base.
that you could see in the gathering that you could list all the people, and the circles would also be listed in there with the people that are in them. But why not have a whole world where these things are physically represented somewhere? You can actually move through this world, and you could get a sense of aliveness in, there are people here. They're doing their activity, and they're located there or there. And I believe that this will also be a really attractive feature. It's just our big thing right now is that nobody's in.
And one thing just for fun to mention, because we're still kind of at Gambit at 30, is that the biggest core feature in this is, of course, the UDP layer, where to be efficient, that kind of software that it has to be based on UDP. That's so clear. And Mark actually added UDP for this software, and it's using it massively, and it's really like an amazing piece of software. It's so simple to use, and there hasn't been a single bug in it. And actually, one feature that it's so bad that it doesn't work anymore. Because of all the complexity, because it looks so simple to do a UDP video conferencing system. You have missed packet and you just ask for them. yeah, right.
Now, if
But
you're
2
the
years
best packet,
later-
just go forward, man.
Yeah, it's like, oh my god, it's so complicated. It's all, I can't even explain why it's so complicated, but damn, is it or what? And so at first, we had these problems and we couldn't understand what was happening. So we started building all this infrastructure of capturing events in an homogeneous, like circular ring that basically captures everything relevant that happens in the system. So we have complete retraceability. And at first it was just like, exporting that to a big spreadsheet on Google Cloud. And Barbara became like the expert at doing, all these exploration in the spreadsheet and all that. And the tool evolved, at one point I was like, look at what I did this weekend while you were away, and the spreadsheet was actually inside the application where she could start doing things. And then it evolved and it evolved. And over the last year, every time, that tool has been our really and it's what basically enabled us to bring the application to that level. And the last step that occurred about 7 or 8 months ago, which I would so much love to show, but it's broken in this moment, I couldn't make it work, was we actually, when we replay it, we actually see the actual UDP packets live being streamed between the client, the server, and the other person at the end. And you actually see the packets, and sometimes you'll see the packets are all gathered together, and it kind of explains the behavior, and you have, maybe I can show just a quick image. So it won't be live, unfortunately, but still better than nothing. Yeah. So this is the visualizer. So this is the first version when the spreadsheet became something live, where you can actually click, sort, filter, like all that jazz, and the graphs that show the lag, the latency, all these things, the drop packets, and you can click somewhere and the spreadsheet updates and the information. And this is basically a representation. You can zoom in where you have what every Gambit thread is doing. So it's got what we call the chronology. And it can explain sometimes what is the behavior that led you to lose packets and have a break in the audio that you kind of don't really understand. And as you play it, you actually see the packets going live. And it's so useful. It has been really an amazing experience to develop that tool and to have that together evolve as the tool is evolving.
So this is like what you experience is the probabilistic nature of the network.
Yeah.
Like,
Right, yeah.
that packet took like 5 seconds.
Yeah.
And those packets didn't arrive at all.
Yeah.
And then like where the symmetries between different links.
Yeah. So you can basically replay it. And, the next step to the tool that I haven't done, which is the dream, it would be to be able to completely capture exact everything that happened, and basically be able to replay it, but change the underlying algorithms and have some metrics that basically give you an idea of the call quality at the end. So how regular were the packets for the audio, for the video, the drop, all these things. And you can basically try different algorithms with different network conditions. A network that is very good but drops, or a network that is slow, all these. There's so many different kinds of networks, and as we start installing new people, you get these weird behaviors where it works perfectly for us, and for that person, the audio becomes really bad. Yeah.
Which codecs do you use?
It's actually H.264 for the video, and for the audio, it's Vorbis. All done through a really nice library called JazzScheme. Maybe you know it? Yeah. So JazzScheme is basically the big power horse underneath this to play the video, the audio, and we take care of the UDP layer and the 3D and the rendering, and JazzScheme takes care of the codec stuffs. And I don't know if it's interesting to show, but one really interesting piece of software that I was able to create for the software that really made it a lot faster. So as imagine that all these, well, I could actually put a couple of videos.
I think it's not the extent of your screen.
So you have all these videos and the packets are coming from the server and all that. And there's the audio, the video, it has to go through the codec and all that. And JazzScheme is a library that was thought for C. So they have this really nice polling or blocking API. And to block, you actually block the Gambit thread, of course, so it doesn't work. So the first version for so long was basically just polling, and of course it was killing the CPU. And I actually came up with a way to implement solve that problem that is very simple, which is we actually use a TCP server local, so it's actually super efficient because it's just in the same process. And the C code, where the C code actually starts a P thread that is actually blocked on the JazzScheme API that will inform it when some data is available. And when that data becomes available, it basically sends one character to the socket, and Gambit is blocked in a thread on that thing. So Gambit is blocked. So in this thing, if you have like 10 people, you'll have like 30 Gambit threads all blocked in, blocked on basically a socket. And as soon as something happens in the JazzScheme pipeline, this character gets sent, Gambit gets woken up, and basically can now call safely the polling API, knowing there will be data and it's not inefficient to call the polling API. And that's what enables us to actually, you basically use the full potential of JazzScheme in the high-level language that is Gambit. Yeah. And I actually used that same thing for many other things after that, and it really opened up a lot of possibilities. This simple feature to be able to block on C code cleanly. Yeah.
So, do you want to show Jenny?
Say more.
Could you like put more videos, because I heard this 80 video claim that
Yeah,
you made.
I won't go to 80, but I can put more.
80, I'm not sure the Wi-Fi will.
Video playback is also JazzScheme.
Oh.
Video playback is also JazzScheme.
Yeah, JazzScheme does everything. So, yeah, because at the moment we're on G-Cloud, the videos are actually going to G-Cloud because they don't know that, they are going for Barbara and everybody.
Although I'm
So,
out of here.
You're out of here, but when I do the test for the video, it's a local test where I'm the only user. Anyways,
I know it can crash, but I'm just curious.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, try and I'll just.
And it's as we start, the other thing about circling is sometimes you get really large groups, like, I don't know, 20, say is a very large group. And at that point, I find it really disturbing to be in this kind of environment where you're seeing everybody equally. It's distracting. And that's where I'd rather have the circle where I could actually zoom in on who I'm interested in at this time more than the,
That's already pretty impressive with all the videos going like that.
Is it possible to capture the screen and show a screen capture?
Yes, there is actually a mode. It's a nice feature of JazzScheme. JazzScheme has a mode where you just activate a flag and it enables you to share screen basically. So the ability to share your screen, and when you share your screen, I can show it.
actually, I'll share my screen.
Sure.
So here I am.
It will take a bit of time when you come in because there's all these videos.
That's amazing.
So Barbara just came in and she's going to share her screen.
I actually can't
Well,
find
just
how
turn
this.
off your
Okay.
So Alt Shift Y. If you remember. Oh, that's fine. So where has you, yes, probably I just have to find
Probably
where
would
you
help
are.
with fewer videos. Or maybe,
Yeah.
maybe put mine in focus.
Here you are, but your screen is up. Oh yeah, here you are. So this is Barbara's screen, and you can go on Google Chrome, on Chrome or whatever.
Oh, and look at how I look at set files.
Ah,
This is
a
amazing.
really good editor.
You can use a J to go down, or a K to go up.
Yes.
What kind of bandwidth
Yeah.
required for that? Because you really don't want to go bankrupt by centrally hosting all the videos.
Actually, the videos are basically just ways for us to test our software, you know. So maybe there would be one playing to, you know, we all look at a video together, we listen to music, stuff like that. But having many videos is kind of a bit silly, you know. The goal is to have like a circle of 10, 15, 20 people. And so then you really have to have the live thing. And the videos can actually be streamed from the server. So you don't have to go and upload and download. We basically implemented both features so we can actually test the software. So when my Mac is actually streaming 8 videos, it's kind of simulating having 8 people bombarding the server. But if you play a video, of course, you'll stream it from the server where you don't have the upload, which is a bit silly. And does that answer your question?
For some part, yeah. So basically, my point is that you really want to figure out the way to do it P2P when possible. When, for example, there is a good firewall that you can traverse in between the P2P, so you don't get an exorbitant bill for months.
But I'm not sure about that because maybe you're right. I'm not an expert. But if there's 20 people and I have to send peer-to-peer to 20 people, it's super demanding. It seems like much more efficient for large groups to actually have a server architecture.
Yeah, it's possibly more efficient, but it's also more expensive for you.
Oh, in terms of cost and GCloud.
Yeah,
Oh.
it's gonna
For the kind of volume we're talking, it's not that expensive. You know, we're talking about $30 a month.
Okay.
You know, it's-
Okay, but if the software takes off.
So
Yeah.
it's a question of the user numbers we're looking at. And, you know, if we were to get 200 users, most of whom are not on at any time, I would consider that hugely successful. If the users start numbering in the thousands for some reason, then we'll need a different we probably need some model where users are contributing to the server cost for one thing.
And the users run servers themselves.
So
Or the users run their own servers, yeah.
Exactly. At
One
one
cent
point,
per
users
gigabyte.
will have their own servers if they
Some
want.
will,
But if you
some won't.
multiply by the
Exactly.
depends on what you
real-time can be up to 10 cents a gigabyte, depending on how fast it is, and non-real-time can be like 0.01 cents a gigabyte.
I'm thinking of a group that I think might be interested in using this. And the first question that came up in my mind was, it runs on this. Will it run on this?
Nope. It's actually something we don't want because Barbara will explain it to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. The whole idea is to have a different vision of online video conferencing
Yes.
where the feel of how you are with everybody is really important.
Yeah.
I have circling calls all the time where somebody's on their phone and they can't even see the other people in the group. Like they can maybe see 2 other people because it's just the form factor. It's impossible. And so we thought long and hard, how are we going to move this to mobile? Because that's really important. And until we finally decided we're not. If you want to be a part of this world, you're going to have an actual computer screen. The form factor just isn't there.
But if you're at 3D, you can move the space back and forth. You can move one person here, person 10 feet away.
Yeah, but still, 20 people on a small phone, it's just
Still.
super kind.
And having said that, I could still imagine audio-only modes that would run on a phone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Something like that. But there's a sense of pretense. Like, you're going to be there in video, but you're not really going to see anything.
Yeah.
It's kind of important, if I'm in this environment, that I actually understand what everybody is seeing or not seeing about me.
Yeah, actually, we don't even let someone connect a circle if their webcam is not activated. It's not, you activate it or not. When you join a circle, the webcam turns on because we're doing circling here. That's what we do. So
yeah, go ahead.
So do you think you're trying to aim too large? Maybe your market is, for example, I can see this becoming something like movie night, and if my family is away, I can sit down with my father and just watch a movie, but not necessarily do circling, because that won't be something that people know about, or maybe people will be maybe put off by that. But if it's something more focused like movie night, let's sit down to watch a movie, and then you have you sell licenses for, I'll buy the app for $9.99, and then I can watch my Netflix with my father, or I don't know.
I don't have a sense that there is value in that in the world right now, because there's already lots of ways to watch a movie, YouTube or Netflix or whatever it is.
Watching it together. Yeah, but together.
And
everybody is coming with solutions for that. So,
and we're not set up for the entire world. Like, this isn't scalable to the entire, or to large numbers. This isn't web scalable. This is scalable to tens or hundreds of people.
And you want to keep people in different places, do Netscape together, and talk on the phone about what they're seeing.
I'm not completely sure I understand your question.
Screen sharing.
But what I want to say
Netflix,
is, I already know who these people are. Like, if I don't know all the people in the world who circle, then I know somebody who knows some. Like, we're that well networked that it's not a group I have questions about who's in it or who's not.
yeah, it's a small community.
Yeah.
So because at the moment we're still not sure if it's actually going to happen, we don't know. We're going to continue inviting people from the circling world and anybody interested, and working on different things, and we'll see. So yeah, it's I'm excited to go back to Yahoo and put Yahoo into that. But I'm also excited to having it work with circling, because it's a big part of my life. I love to be in these groups of people and be connected. Yeah. So any other questions?
I've never done this with you. When you have 10, 20 people at once, does everybody just speak at once? What happens there?
Well, they don't intentionally speak at once.
No, but I'm sure it happens.
It can, and usually what physically happens is, as if you and I both started speaking at the same time, we would both back off and allow the other person some space, and then one person would speak, and then we figure out who's speaking. One of the practical difficulties in our software that we discovered is that in order to get our audio and video synchronization and other things working well, we had too long of a lag time.
Yeah.
And so there was more of that phenomenon, people talking over each other.
I had that problem on transatlantic phone calls via satellite a long time ago. Nowadays they use landlines and it's different.
I remember that, yeah. Yes.
I'm not familiar with circling, but I imagine that in the real world, if people are in a circle, you'll hear people that are right beside you much louder than people on the opposite end of the circle. So could you play with the idea of distance?
Directional audio, yes.
Maybe.
Yeah.
It's something Yahoo has, so yeah, it could be a fun try to.
Because that could be a solution to the problem of people speaking over each other. You could have segments of circles that can hear each other.
No, but the whole point of doing a circle is that everybody is fully present. When you do a circle, you basically want to be there totally for the person.
But you only want one conversation at a time.
Although actually,
everything is included also.
Yeah.
So
no, in some forms of circling, actually that happens a lot. We're in this big room, and people start breaking off into their own little groups. And I would love for that to be supported
Exactly.
by, I'm taking me and these other 4 images are going to go off over here. And yes, we will start only hearing each other. Oh dear.
Oh, it's the network because we both crashed.
What is the log file part? The log file has been generated?
Yes, so automatically all the threads have been snapshot into a file called the snapshot file. And this snapshot file can actually be dragged to JEDI, and you basically are back with all the threads, the inspectability. You click on the thread, you get the stack, you click on the frame, you get the variables, the
Could
code.
you do that?
Why don't you demonstrate that,
Sure,
Gil?
I'll demonstrate that.
So
And
you'll have
the
to start out again.
installer now actually will scan these and upload them to.
Can we
I'm
see
just
it
going
in
to
the
shut
server?
down. We're going to start you again.
And
That's what I
So-
want to see. Let's see the logs.
yeah,
Okay, so watch
Okay,
this.
we'll let Rob.
Sending
Sending
logs.
logs right here. This to me is magic because users don't have to do anything. It just comes to us. And now Guillaume can show us what we do with the
so
log.
Is JEDI your like is that an open source project like VS3M? That's open
Yes.
source.
yes, JEDI. I'm supposed to show JEDI. Maybe I'll show it real quick. But
You have to
So
get the
this-
logs.
yes. So this is Gaia. Gaia and JEDI are exactly the same thing, basically. So it's an IDE that is really tailored to Gambit and Jazz. So anything you can do, inspect in Gambit and Jazz, you can do it.
How many
In July.
things have you written? Like,
Huh?
yesterday you showed us audio, and then today it was that like you just showed us the video conferencing software, and then there's like this IDE.
Yeah.
And then there's JEDI,
I'm
and
a bit older than you.
I don't know. I just find it amazing that every time you have a need, you make your own tool.
Oh, and by the way, there was a question of, well, I was gonna
Whoops.
say, it really is written in Lisp. That's just some small portion of the code somewhere.
Yeah, I'll show that. So let's go to Together admin, and we have a small script that basically goes onto the buckets, the gcloud buckets, and downloads all the crashes. Wow, that's a lot.
Thank you, crashes.
Holy shit, what are all these guys? Well, I think it's all the times we were trying and the network was not working. So if I go here, I have this small tool I did with which is a snapshot explorer. So I'll just go to the place where all my logs are.
Just by the way, I'm interrupting you, but all of this is actually, all the windowing system and all that is actually written in Jazz. Okay, none of it actually uses anything of the operating system, except maybe OpenGL.
Just getting the rectangle basically. So all this is the tree widget, and all these are the Jazz widgets.
How many operating systems do your UI, your
Support?
yeah.
Yeah, 3 basically. In terms of UI, it's Mac, Windows, and X11. And in terms of C, that's basically everything Gambit supports. So at the moment we run on Linux, Mac, and Windows. So if I sort by date, then we'll get the one we just got, which is client expected. And what nice feature is, if I double click, I go into full-blown mode, which is to actually import the thing and blah. But I get a quick, if I want to just scan these guys because they're duplicates and everybody's having the same problem, I really see all the properties of my application. And this is basically the stack where the error occurred without all the other threads. But let's say I don't get it from that, so I just double click on the guy. And the error occurred in so this is the place where all the processes are listed because you can debug multiple processes. So when, Together is actually a server and a client, so often there's like 2 guys here. And these are all the threads and the frames and etc. And the crash that occurred like before in Together becomes inspectable exactly as if it was actually happening live now. So you can click and you will basically see the variable. There is one catch. There was something that used to work that doesn't work at the moment, so you don't have automatic code highlighting when it's a crash. Yeah. So, and when you have something here, if I can find something interesting, because it's all, yeah, you can drill down and inspect. Yeah, that kind of stuff. Yeah. And the thing that Mark was saying, one thing I love to do to kind of show that this is really written in this, it's not bullshit. There is this mode, because called what I call the UI inspector. It's a function I did, and when you do that, basically you can grab a widget that is giving you problem. Let's say I'm having problem and I'm trying to understand why this is displaying this. So of course I want this row and the metadata associated to it, etc. So what I'm going to do is, let's say, click on this button, and now I'm evaluating code in the Gaia repo, because Gaia is a debugger, so it's also debugging itself. It's always debugging itself plus the other processes that register into itself. So this is its own repo. So this action icon is actually this guy. And to actually prove it, I can run any kind of code I want to in Gaia. It's a full scheme repo, everything is dynamic, you can evaluate whatever you want. So if I close it, watch the button at the top, boom, it's gone. And it's inside the IDE. And that's it. So another example is, so this is the function in the tree node column. So when a tree has the main column, this is the code that draws the dotted line with the small thingies. So I'm actually in that code. I made a few changes. I go basically Control Enter. It's evaluated. Actually, you would see it immediately, but because it hasn't been invalidated, I'll just need to move a few things. And that's it. The lines all become red according to my changes that was done through Control Enter.
Are the drawing frames also OpenGL?
No, this is not OpenGL. All these functions actually go to a library which is called, Kero. Kero is a high-level abstract 2D rendering library that helps Kero. So basically the drawing you see here is Kero for the 2D and some interface to the OS to get the invalidation, that kind of stuff.
What if you do this in OpenGL and you can do this in 3D?
It would be amazing. You know, if I was to do this today, I would totally do it in OpenGL straight off the bat.
Yeah.
But at the moment, so
3D IDE.
yeah.
Oh, it didn't work. We could do it again in OpenGL.
But actually, if you guys saw yesterday when there was like the sheep and I was showing his script on top of him, you know, like as a 3D thing, my goal is totally to have all the functionality of Jedi available for the end user in a really simple way to use, of course. But you know, using these 3D panes and having access to the debugger and everything.
It sounds, to me, it sounds like you would have so much fun in VR. Like this idea of a 3D world, and then you would be inside that world.
Yeah.
That's like the next logical step, right?
Yeah.
And then you could develop your IDE inside that.
But I already feel inside the world if I'm there and other people are there. If it's 3D, it's just a question of, you know, feeling more and more. So maybe because you've been with 3D your whole life, you know, for you it's like, wow, the next big thing is VR. But for me, if I'm here, I feel all alone. But if I'm in a 3D world and people are around me, even if it's just 3D on my screen, I already feel kind of more part of the team. And of course, I would love to experience VR, and if it comes, you know, I'll be all for it. But it already feels amazing when I'm in the 3D world and I see avatars moving around, and I know that this avatar is Barbara, and she's actually seeing the code I'm doing on that thing, and she might actually click on it and start coding in it, and we'll code together. You know, we actually did that when we met 2 years ago. There was this project for her to actually do a bit of scheme, and so the algorithm in Together that layouts the rectangles and finds the best positions, she wanted to do it. So this is when I actually did the code to be able to be multi-user for the scripting. So she did her whole algorithm in Yahoo. Maybe I can show that real quick. So here's the guy of yesterday. Galois. Oh, and I never did show the queens.
Oh, yeah.
Let's just show the queens real quick. So they're here. And so the cat is there, and 1, 2, 3, go.
Okay, so just go fly.
Cool.
Yeah. And there's 8 queens, and oh yeah, let me do it in another way, just for fun. So I'll start the client, and I'll ask it to connect to Gaia. I hope my Gaia is running, yes. So if I actually go back to Gaia, we see that Yahoo has appeared as a process. So if I click on Yahoo, I will see the list of all the running threads. And one thing that Yahoo does, it names the threads with the name of the animal, so you have at least a fighting chance to know what's going on. So these are the 8 queens, all the Drenai female. And Galois is here, the sheep. And for instance, if I go here and I tell Galois to do his thing, and he's doing his thing. If I go here and I click on the sheep and break the thread, then I have access to basically what it was doing. So at the moment, because I broke it, it's actually in a task sleep, but I have access to what's going on in the task, and if there was a bug, I could actually debug it inside Jedi. And if we go to Yahoo, the application is still functional, but Galois is stopped because its thread is being debugged by Jedi. And when I'm done, I can basically go here and just continue. And if I go here, you know, he should be back somewhere. Yeah, here he is. Yeah.
Where does the IDE get its information? Is it in the same process space, or is it
No. It's really that mistake I did 30 years ago. I was working at a company where we would do everything in the same process, and it was like the ugliest mess. So when I started, when I actually ported the jazz version I was doing on top of Gambit, you know, Mark and me, we had like a couple of really good discussions, and he basically convinced me to do
Only
it
a couple.
the right way.
I said only a couple.
Yeah, only a couple. So, for instance, at the moment, it's really, if you actually type text here, like 2, 3, it's really surprising because that text is actually typed inside the ID. But if you do it like that, it's not general because the AND program should have full control. It's basically running its own REPL. So it's running a REPL doing a read. So the read appears here as something that's being read through the mechanism that, you know, that communicate between the debugger and debugging. But the REPL can do anything. It could read a line, the process. So this is a REPL, but it could be anything. And basically you do that, and it ends up doing that. So I could ask, let's say, for the current thread. So this is Gambit code. And just to show that it's fully inspectable, then this is an inspect of the current thread with the BTQs and all the scary stuff. And,
But it's like some kind of RPC, right?
yes, of course. There is. Yeah, I could go into details. There is a communication layer between the debugger and the debugger. So what I wanted to show was, we go back to what was the initial thing, was the scripting. So here we have a really nice script with Mandelbrot in the background. But the one I wanted to show is this one. So this script, which basically lays out 8 rectangles, is basically this script. And the code at the bottom basically just tests it. So for instance, if I type a 0 here, then you have 80 screens, 80 ones, and it's completely live. I can just type 0 and boom, you have 800 circle rectangles being laid out. And that code we actually did with Barbara being in Ottawa, and doing this, and I was here in Montreal, and we were both in Yahoo, and I could actually code and explain, and basically we had fun. Yeah.
So all of this jazz language and Jedi and Gaia, did you build this for your own use, or did you work for someone or your own company, or like how did you sustain yourself?
I sustained myself because I was working like crazy.
So you had a job and you did this.
And a kid. Yeah, it was a lot. And at first I was basically, it was for my own things always, because I wanted these features, especially since when I started jazz, I didn't know market. So I was doing my own GC, my own compiler, everything, but it was still to do that kind of thing. But I was really struggling because doing the low level was not my forte. My strength was really like the end of the UI and the high level stuff. And so when Mark and me met, there was this crazy project. At one point, Mark said, "Have you ever considered rewriting jazz in Gambit?" And I was like, "Really? Are you crazy? It's in C. It will be so slow." And short story, 2 years later, I actually did it. It took me like 2 years for everything to be fully done. And the first version was like 80 times slower. It was really slower. But what happened is I realized that jazz had been programmed purely functionally. Everything was a function, even the low-level stuff. But in C, the call of a function call is so minimal compared to the trampoline that there was no real problem. So basically, I was forced to kind of re-engineer the low levels of jazz to be all kind of macros that expand, so that ultimately, if I do an access to one of my objects, a bit like Viso was saying, it has to be ultimately like a vector ref. So, and when that was done, actually it was running faster than the C code, because the port system and the I/O was so, it's Gambit. So actually the result was faster, which was really amazing at that point. I'd say that maybe the only key part that was missing in Gambit that I'd like to show, and maybe we can finish with this, is so for me, the thing that made me love Gambit above all is that it's not bloated. It's really low level, and it gives you total access to, like sharp FX plus that becomes like just a C call. But it's not safe. So either you code all your thing with sharp and your code is really dangerous, or So what I did is basically had an optional type system to Jazz. So and this is what really enables Yahoo If Yanu doesn't have that, you're screwed. It will never be able to do the kind of thing it does. So if we look at so for instance, this is the geometry module, and everything is fully typed, like everything. I would say that in the whole of Yanu, maybe 1% is typed. Not much needs to be typed, but what needs to be typed is typed. So that ultimately, I don't have any sharps. If I want to actually run the code fully safe and, for whatever reason, I can just go into a debug mode and everything generates completely safe Gambit code that cannot crash. But at the moment with the type declaration, it ends up being basically exactly like the C code. Because all that, the compiler will do type inferencing and all that stuff, and end up with fx plus and fx or fl minus and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And is that available online? Can we look at the type system and your...
Yes, the type system when you use it is really, really nice and really easy to understand and use. The implementation is a bit more, I'm not sure if that's something you would want to look at. You could, of course. But, just to make a parenthesis, when I started Jazz, the dream would have been to have something like what you did, Viso, because I wanted to have like module system with full syntax and all these things, but it was not my strong point, and I wanted too much to get to the end product. So, yeah, I wanted to do my games and my stuff, Jedi, everything. So I have a really nice module system. Most of what you described is same concerns I had, but when it was time to really do it, so it's really like fundamentally correct. I didn't spend the same effort. So the low level is a bit more clunky, but still it works and it enables Yahoo. So the end result is nice, but the code is a bit more scary.
So you just parse, for example, definition is just a macro? And you
definition in this case is not a macro, it's more like a declaration. This is like, I wanted to not have to create a separate file because, we're talking, the amount of code in here is so massive that just have to create a fucking external for every definition is painful. So if I scrap this guy, I want to be done. That's it. I scrap this guy, it's gone. I don't have to go to another module and remove the external. Same thing when I added public. So basically when the public is not there, it's like not having an external, an export. So the public enables me to do that kind of thing. So basically definition is exactly like define plus the ability to put a visibility that will do the export for you.
And then you parse the types.
Yes. I parse the types and I do type propagation, so that usually you don't need to have to give the types of the parameters, and the other ones will be deduced for you.
And it's all at compile time.
Yep, all at compile time. Yeah.
So it's not just a runtime check.
Nope. There is a runtime check that happens when you enter into the function. So, because I didn't want to, there's always the trade-off of do you do like full-scale thing like Stalin that will take days to compile. So no, I didn't want that. So what I wanted is everybody is a self world. So of course, when I enter, I have to check the types. So about a year ago, when I met Bavalan, we started the project. Scripting became a lot more important. And Jazz at that point was not a safe language. You could totally write code and just crash it, totally. And I knew that scripting, I wanted a language that was safe. So I made it into a safe language, but the language became a lot slower. So for instance, now at the moment, this guy will generate 2 different versions. I did the normal stuff, I did that work. So it will generate a low-level plane that is completely not checked, and the high level. And if I can prove that this guy, let's say a certain function calling this guy already has correct types, then I will directly call the low-level one, bypassing all the entry checks, which enables me to basically be as fast and also safe.
That's awesome.
It's really awesome.
Oh yeah, the type system is.
Yeah, we're considering, getting a pluggable type system to Verbal as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of my concerns is that if we have types, we have to be able to do optimizations and just drop one safe code when we can prove it's safe.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean,
It's
I
the
read
big
a lot of
challenge
unsafe
is
code,
exactly
but-
that, unsafe, you use the unsafe code only if it's completely proven. And I got it wrong many times, and had really surprising crashes and oh yeah, right.
I always thought the typed system should be at the low level, and the untyped stuff goes on top of it.
And one thing that is like a small detail, but for me it kind of really gives what types are for me. Jedi colors them in a low gray color. You don't want to see them, just enough to read them. But we're not in a type language. Let's not fool ourselves. We love untyped. So they're a bit more discreet.
So the type in the example that you were pointing at is vertex or vertical angle. How do you parse the?
So the type
vertical
comes
angle?
after the variable because the type is less important than in C. It's optional. I've put it after. So its directory is a vertex, up is a vertex, x1 is a float, and this is the return type.
Oh, that's the function name. Vertical angle.
Yes. So this is the function vertical angles that takes 2 parameters and returns a float. Yeah.
Okay.
And if the function can prove that this is a float, for instance, there won't be any check on exit that needs to happen if it cannot prove it. That kind of stuff.
I'm just saying that getting rid of the runtime checks is the key. So if you are to have types, they get to make it count for something, not just correctness, but make it run faster as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
So, any other questions?